Hey now. What's happening out there in guitar land? Woo! Sunday morning. All right. I got the big cup of coffee out today. This cup says on it, good morning, handsome. So good morning to y'all, handsomes. Says that down there. All right. What are we talking about? What did I do this week? I put up a video for the Tonex finally. Had a lot of questions about that over the last few months, and then finally got something done on that, which I really enjoyed doing. Just looking for something that I just remembered I lost. I don't see it. Okay, it's a little bit of a mystery. Anyways, never mind. Tonex. Really enjoyed, well, it was a labor of love. I'll put it to you that way. But I enjoyed the results after I finally got the capture process figured out, and man, some of them are really good. Like for example, then I put out a video later this week for the Corey Wong pedal, and I used the Tonex, one of the captures that I made on my Jim Kelly amp in that video, and it's like, I love it. Like, it sounds really good. It's just a really, really, really good clean sound. So there, I put it to work already, and it worked great. And it's like, I can't imagine, I don't know. I mean, it sounded terrific in the Corey Wong video, I thought. So Byron says, Tonex video was great. Best review of that unit. Thank you. I appreciate that. The video is doing really well, which I'm happy about. I needed a banger. It was like videos were languishing. So much competition out there these days. All these young kids with their YouTube channels. But I was actually really happy with the way the video came out, although it's long. But I think it shows the process, I think. And Richard said that's the best one I've seen. Thank you. Earl says best one, or says thanks for the Tonex demo. Not necessarily best one, but looking forward to your IR captures. Yeah, I'll make the package available one of these days. When I just figure that out. One of these days in the not too distant future, that will happen. I know sometimes I say things like that and then it never happens, but this will happen. Yeah. Todd says, great news that we will finally hear the new Soundgarden songs. Yeah, I guess it looks like it, that will happen. So, which I think is really good for everybody. I feel that's a really good resolution, and that for the fans and for just everybody involved to not have that, stress anymore and stuff like that, is a really, really good thing. So I don't know how far they'd gotten in the recording process, although I was in touch with Chris during those days because I was helping him with guitar sounds and stuff, and he was doing stuff in his own studio. So I can speak a little bit to it because I sort of knew a little bit about what was going on, but essentially they were on that tour. And he had his home studio set up, and I'd gotten him set up with some, like a reactive load and some impulse responses and stuff. And he was just getting into that world and recording guitars that way and really enjoying it because he could do some stuff at home. So, and was, I think, expressing to me, as I remember, that he wanted to do a fair amount of the stuff at home. Like, he wanted to record vocals and stuff like that. And he always did that. That wasn't uncommon. I don't think it was a common thing that he liked to record vocals without, like in a, he at one point told me a story about being in a big studio and being in the, in the vocal booth, and there's glass in between you and the control room. There's people in there, and the sound in the headphones isn't quite comfortable, and like, then, okay, let's do a take, and then he's trying to sing and he can't, and he's like, oh my God, I sound terrible, and my whole world's falling apart around me, and like, he just expressed all this kind of insecurity stuff that we all have, and I was like, wow, you feel like that sometimes. That's amazing. And he was like, yeah, like, of course, he's just a guy, and he like, so anyways, through all that, he learned how to set compressors and mic pre's and stuff and get a great sound that he felt really comfortable with. And he just really enjoyed that because, like, I love that too. I love having I also sometimes like the pressure of being with people around and having to come up with something. And because I find it focuses you as a musician. But the kind of the comfort zone that we've all gotten into in our home studios, I guess it can be a good and a bad thing. you can easily just kind of get a little lazy and go, okay, well, I can do 60 takes, so I will, whereas that doesn't really happen in a big studio. So it's a good and a bad thing, I guess. But I could see for vocals how especially so you could really get in the zone and be comfortable and be not afraid to try things that, might not work or sound weird or whatever. And you're anxious if there's, in a big studio and there's other people there. And that must be hard, as a singer to do that. So anyway, he was doing vocals at home, and I'm not sure how far that he got, but I guess that's what we're going to find out, when we hear. So it's good that it's settled for sure. Do you think the tones would sound? How do you think the tones would sound going through a new X MG30? The Tonex. I mean, cool if you set it for a flat, straight up clean sound. It should sound pretty cool, and you can also use it for pedal sounds. Probably work pretty good. I would think. Ryan says he liked the Wong pedal, best song ever. Thanks, man. Yeah, that was a fun one. That one came really quick. Hey, thanks for the super chat, David. Over there in the UK. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Zachary says that 20 minutes is the sweet spot for YouTube videos. That was about how long that one was. Yeah, it's interesting. People like longer videos, That's pretty interesting. Christopher says, any experience with the Positive Grid Spark amp? Not really, actually. I did a little bit of Positive Grid stuff on their plugins, but I've never tried one of the amplifiers. Haven't tried one, so I don't know. Yeah. Cochin should sing for Soundgarden. Gritchy's got a great voice. I don't know that Soundgarden. It's a weird one. Like bands getting back to how do you get back to how do you replace Chris? I guess AC/DC did it. There's not a lot of examples of bands coming back from losing a singer and moving on and doing a different thing. I just don't know. I mean, it's like he was such a huge part of the whole process. I mean, I kind of like when they make a new band. Like, for example, when Audioslave did their thing, they didn't call it Rage Against the Machine. It just became a new band with 3 of the members of Rage Against the Machine and Chris. So, if they want to continue and make music, I mean, it's up to them and how they do it and stuff like that. But I think it'd be really neat if you were to get together with another singer to just do it under another name. Kind of like when STP did Talk Show or the different, it's cool. And those Seattle bands, they did that. I mean, Pearl Jam became Pearl Jam after Andy died, right? And changed the name, of the band. I mean, when I think about, Mad Season or these different projects or Temple of the Dog, when they get together and they just called it something else because it was something else, In that spirit, I don't think it's like everybody's going to know it's those guys and it would get a ton. It's not like they need to use the Soundgarden name just because it's, for recognition or something. Everybody will know if like Matt Cameron and Kim and Ben got together and did another thing. So Doug says, like Suicide by Soundgarden is such a crusher and the tuning is unique. Yeah, and I loved playing that song. I used to use my Dave Grohl guitar on that song when we would play that. And we didn't do it a lot. We probably only did it like 10 times or something live. But I would get so... There was a few of Chris's songs that I would get so... Like, you can close your eyes when you play them. And just, I would just listen to the in-ears and just get that hypnotic guitar part, that kind of mid-rangey, the main verse sort of figure. Oh, God, I'm kind of getting chills, like, actually thinking about it right now. Like, I used to get just so into this song is so badass, and I get to play this live right now, and just get into the guitar part, and it would just be like this. I don't know. It's such a great. It was just that's why I always say that Chris, even as a sideman gig for me, making that music with him was the closest to my where your heart is musically that I've had in a gig like that. Where I just felt like it was like really up my alley. Basically. So yeah, like Suicide was actually a incredible song in that spirit, for me. Blow Up the Outside World was another one that I could just get lost in playing, you know, and it was really fun, dynamically, where I wasn't thinking, I was just playing and just playing that music, you know. It was like so fun. Anyways, Anari says, I'm probably the only person in the world that would rather not have those songs released without Chris having a say in it. Well, you know, that's an interesting point, and I get your concern, but know that a lot of I don't know the terms of the legal action exactly around what happened, but know that a big part of the concern was, at least I don't want to get too into this because I don't know like the resolution and stuff, but I just know that a big part of the concern, out of respect for Chris, was that he wasn't there. And so how was that going to be addressed from a personnel standpoint of people involved in finishing the songs? And you know, Vicky Cornell was adamant about that, and I thought that was a really good thing, that somebody should be there to kind of be like in his absence, the voice of Chris, not singing voice obviously, but what he would have wanted. So how would that be addressed, right? So know that was a concern, and that it's almost a next to impossible sort of thing. But that weight of like knowing that he would have wanted it a certain way, and that you know, so how are you going to address that? And also, you know, that band was a pretty much straight up a democracy, and so everybody's voice is really important. So just having respect for that, and how do you deal with that when one of the guys is gone? So anyways, hopefully that helps to alleviate. I feel pretty confident that if terms were reached, that's been addressed, and that whatever's going to happen will be done with kind of the utmost respect and everything, and that it'll be a good thing, you know. And that's why I feel good about it. I feel like it's like it's nice, like, because I did, you know, legal stuff sucks surrounding music, and it's just nice when everybody can agree, and so it feels good that it's okay, you know. I think it'll be good. Yeah, I do. I think it's a good thing. Day to day, what gets more use? Your analog or digital amps? Your analog or digital cabinets? Well, that's a really good. I'd say it's about 50-50, to be honest, because like in the mode I've been in the last couple of weeks, the digital stuff has been getting a lot of use. As a matter of fact, sometimes like when I'm doing certain things, it makes more sense, and I feel like works. For example, if I'm doing like a pedal demo, and it's a digital, or like let's say it's a rotary speaker simulator. Okay, so you're going to want to hear that in stereo, and you're going to want to hear it really clearly, I feel like, to hear what it's doing. When you take it, I can plug it in front of my interface into two plug-in amplifiers. So I can just go into two inputs on my interface, and then on two channels in the DAW, I can call up two plug-in amps. I can set them exactly the same, or different if I want, but generally I do them exactly the same, hard panned, and then with a good clean sound, you know, that's really pure. And then you turn on the thing, the rotary, it just sounds vast and spacious and awesome. Now, if you were to try and mic that in here, it would be difficult, like, because I can't do stereo in here really with two amps. So, you know, I would have different microphones on each amp, and you'd be balancing levels. It would probably still sound really cool, but it's like a more difficult, time-consuming, and I just feel like in the digital world, the plug-in thing works beautifully for that, you know? You know, great clean sound that then is, you know, representing whatever I'm putting into it, you know. So for sometimes it really makes sense, you know. And for getting work done fast and efficiently, it makes sense, you know. But I still have all this stuff here, and I love, you know, using it every day. And I would say it's about 50-50 probably. Maybe a little more on the analog amp end, to be honest, because the thing is, if you've got the setup with an amp switcher and all the amps and the cabs are mic'd, and you can just sort of, you know, turn it all on and dial in a sound, it can be almost faster sometimes using this stuff. You know, it was really the goal with the PT-15 was the synergy of the analog interface, the tube amplifier, and then IRs on the back end. is a very fast way to kind of get to where, sometimes more fast than trying to dial in an XFX or something with any kind of menus or anything, you know? So, yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Steve there with a super chat. How big of a difference do you feel the bridge makes in a guitar sound? It can make a pretty big difference. Go to 510 versus the Fender 6-screw. Definitely different with the saddles make a difference. The solid saddles that you might find on a 510, the steel saddles that are, you know, the blocks, those have a more fundamental sound, a little more solid sound. And then like the bent vintage style saddles have a little bit more air to them, like a little more vintage stratty, overtony. You know what I'm talking about? Like that, a little bit less of a solid punch down the middle that the steel blocks do. That's the difference that I hear there, for example, in the saddles. Different blocks can sound different. And the same question regarding stainless steel frets. I think that stainless steel frets have a sound acoustically that is pretty easy to hear. There's a little more plink on the note, and there can be a little bit more riz or something, you know, on the... It's a slightly different sound. Whether or not it transfers through an amplifier, debatable. I mean, you know, especially not with like dirty sounds. I doubt it's really a thing. Maybe in the cleanest of sounds, if you use low action, you might notice because they do have a little bit of a, you know, if you got any kind of fret rattle or anything, which I don't mind, like a little bit of fret buzz and stuff, but it's definitely like seems a little more pronounced on stainless steel, or a little more, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying, I think, if you're asking me the question. That's a thing. So if your guitar's set up really great and you have a minimum of that, you know, and especially if you play dirty, I don't think it makes a difference. For example, like Eddie Van Halen, everything, he was very picky about everything, I think. You know, a lot of details. And with stainless steel frets, he was like, I don't care. Like, they last forever. They're always polished. They work great. If he felt like they sounded considerably different, you would have probably seen him not use them, you know, is my point. But he was all about it. But he played dirty most of the time, right? So I think it gets any difference that there might be there with, you know, anything from moderate dirt onwards up to high gain is lost in that. So hopefully that's an answer. I will say this. I refretted a Les Paul once with stainless steel frets, and it was a 57 historic. And I did the stainless steel frets in it. They felt great. I felt like the guitar sounded different. And so that I'd come from and I don't even know if it sounded different through the amp, but acoustically I noticed it. And it bothered me a little bit, you know? And it was like, if I was to do it again, I'm trying to say, on a guitar that had nickel frets, and I was going to refret it, and it was a vintage sort of guitar, or maybe a historic reissue or something, and it had nickel frets, and I was going to refret it, I would probably do nickel, you know? On a new guitar, that's my Sirs, my signature guitar, they've got stainless steel frets. One right here, they're always perfectly, you know, polished and sound fantastic. And, you know, they're guitars like that, I don't worry about it. I use stainless because I don't want to deal with steel wool and fret dresses and stuff like that, as, you know, as little as possible anyway. So, yeah, okay. Arthur says, your last video with the Wong pedal actually inspired me to start singing a melody line. That's awesome. Thanks, Arthur. We're collaborating. Ian Thornley needs to sing with Soundgarden. I mean, come on, he sounds very similar. I mean, you know, I think Ian really enjoys his own band. He, you know, he's the master. Why? I mean, I don't think it would make sense for anything other than, you know, another project or some sort of one-off or something. Why would a guy like Ian, who's the, you know, master of his own destiny with Big Wreck and stuff at this point, why would he go join another band? You know, Ian was up for I'll give you a great example of this. Ian was up for the Velvet Revolver gig. And I don't know if he turned it down but I know that not playing guitar was kind of a sticking point, you know, that it was going to be a singing gig. I'm not making that up, am I? I believe he was up for the Velvet Revolver gig. So long ago now, but I know that it was like, yeah, I'm not gonna. That doesn't seem like a right thing for me to go do if I'm not gonna play guitar. Like I can play guitar, so you know, Ian's. I mean, there would be something that would be interesting is Ian making music with them, but under a different name, you know, and call it something else. And I would love to hear what his style of guitar would sound like mixed with Kim and Ben. I mean, that would be actually really interesting. You're not wrong. I just don't think. I think it's so weird because it's just a name. If I think about it in the context of Soundgarden, I'm like, nah. And then if I think, of course he can sing. I mean, he's an unbelievable singer, and he could sing it, and it would be great. But it's like, if you call it Soundgarden, But if you call it something else, and it's like a new thing, oh, great. Now I'm all about it, you know, because it's like not. I don't know. There was, you know, that Soundgarden had it was a legal thing, I think, but it was also kind of a pact that they would never do it without the four guys. You know, that was actually a thing, that it was never going to be like what they decided on that once that lineup was set. I think that's what I heard. That I think Chris told me that, but it was like a, you know, that it wouldn't. Nobody was going to get fired or quit and then they get somebody new and still call it. You know, that was. At least when they were the four of them together, that was a thing. That Soundgarden was them. You know, I know they had, you know, Hero and there was other members and stuff over the years, but once that lineup was set, that was my understanding. Of course, that could change, I guess. But anyways, who knows? I just think it was such a moment in time. You know. Eric says, I think they should go in a new direction. Yeah, I mean, they write the music that they write when they get together, and that's part of it, you know. I don't know how new it would be, but definitely, you know, getting somebody else involved as a singer-writer would change it, wouldn't it, you know? Alex says AC/DC had a great comeback. Yeah, against all odds, AC/DC is the one that, you know, the biggest album that they ever had. With a new singer. It's incredible what they actually achieved. And it was an incredible record. I mean, you know, I always say that I love Brian. He's, you know, and I love him as a guy, especially like even beyond, you know, what he did with AC/DC. He just strikes me. I met him as a kid, and he was, I guess that's part of it, is that he was so cool when I met him when I was like 14. And he was just so nice, and he made such a great impression on me as a young kid, as a person. But then beyond that, what he accomplished was fantastic with them. But having said all that, I'm a diehard like Bon Scott guy, you know? So it's like Bon was just one of the most badass rock and roll frontmen of all time. So is Brian, but I just, you know, Bon was like, it was, you know. So having said all that, Back in Black is kind of the greatest AC/DC record, I think, you know? There's a lot of great ones, you know, but it's like, flawless. It's one of the best hard rock and really one of the greatest records of all time, I think, in that there's not a bad note on the record or a bad song or a throwaway or anything. The record is perfect the whole way through. You know, when people talk about like Thriller or, you know, Sgt. Pepper's or, you know, like records that are, it's like Back in Black is that for rock music. It's absolutely perfect. You wouldn't change a thing, would you? You know? So incredible, but yeah, it's a fun music discussion today. Not as much guitar stuff, more like bands and music. Yeah. Okay, what else we got here? Let's see. Gary says, "Will I be doing a demo for MXR Rhodes Distortion Plus?" I don't know anything about that actually. I haven't even heard about that. Is that a thing? I would love to. MXR is cool. They contact me out of the blue sometimes to just do things like, you know, the last ones would, I don't remember the last pedals I did for them actually, but like the Power 50, you know, the Morello pedal, which was really good, or they'll just hit me up and be, hey man, you want to do a video of this? And it'll be kind of random because they put out a lot of stuff, and occasionally, you know, just it's once every 4 or 5 months they hit me up to do one. So I would love to do it, but Simto says, Soundgarden is a sum of the parts, 100%. All amazing parts in their own right, but Soundgarden is Soundgarden. Yeah. yeah, you can't have. I mean, the contributions of, there's so many songs I use examples of, but one of them is like 4th of July is how do you do 4th of July without those grungy chords? And then when the bass comes in, I never would have thought of that bass part. It's like not in a million years, and probably most bass players wouldn't either, but it is so cool. And, everybody, and then Chris coming in singing on top of it. How does he sing that beautiful melody on top of that degree of sludge, And it makes for Soundgarden. It's just an incredible thing, the chemistry of music, Kyle says that he saw Chris Stapleton last night, and his tone with his Princeton is unreal. He has a signature amp, doesn't he? A signature Princeton with Fender. I'd like to try it sometime. I love a Princeton, man. There's such a great, when we talk about low watt amps, I guess the AC-15s, Tweed Deluxes, but a Princeton is it's kind of got all the magic that people think of when they think of a Fender of that era in a 12-watt package, that is a reasonable volume and just sounds so cool. I mean, isn't Big Log and all that, Robbie Blunt, wasn't that 2 Princetons, I think? With a chorus, and just what a sound, it's just like they compress just beautifully on their own. But turn up that reverb a little bit on the amp and the natural compression of the amp. You basically got compression and reverb, which is like the magic combo for beautiful, clean sounds. And play a Strat through that, and woo, it's good stuff. Eric says, anyone try the Seymour Duncan Super Switch? I have one right here. I'm going to put it in a guitar and make a video. It's just when, because that's going to take me a second to figure out. But I figure I'll put it on one of my signature guitars and make a video. They asked me to make a video, and it seems like, okay, yeah, sure, cool. I've got my gold signature here, first edition, PT signature guitar, and I thought I would put it in there. I need to put the Wilkinson locking saddles on that guitar as well. So I'm going to update that guitar a little bit, start using it a bit more, hopefully. Still got an old 510 on it. There's the original 510, and so I don't use it as much as my other signatures because they stay in tune better. But yeah, I thought Super Switch in that would be pretty cool in that guitar. Be able to get all those pickup combos, see what it sounds like. Yeah. Steven says that he had an issue with his power station. I think I remember this with like a ground thing going on. Loud, high-pitched scream completely resolved when using the effects loop of the power station into high-gain Marshall by using a passive isolated transformer. Cool. Yeah, you probably had a little ground loopy-loop situation that was making for weird, or it was lifted or didn't want to be, I don't know, something. Yeah. What else we got here? Let's see. Peter says Beinhorn with Soundgarden was the perfect combo, even if they butted heads. I agree. I mean, what they came up with was awesome, Kyle says Michael Beinhorn was an awesome producer, or is an awesome producer. I agree. Yeah, I really like him. I've met him a few times, and I had a really good time talking with him, and I would love to, talk to him more. He's moved. He doesn't live in L.A. anymore, but for a minute I was kind of getting to know him. He's a very cool guy. I liked him. He was very nice to me as well, and kind of bolstered my confidence a little bit about some work that I did producing. And he was like, he'd heard some tracks that I did, and he was really cool about it. And I was like, wow, if that's coming from him, it doesn't strike me as a guy that bullshits, So it was really nice of him. So I really liked him. I thought he was really cool. I'd love to do something with him sometime. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, what else we got here? Just reading through your comments. Hair's getting long. Yeah, I figure I got a guy that cuts my hair now that is like a total badass, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna grow this out one more time and see what happens. He knows what to do. He's like I'm like, let's grow this stuff out and see what we got. The last time I did it, like a couple of years ago, I just hated it. I hated where it ended up. I hated it every day when I get up. I'm cutting this off, and I ran to the barber one day. Now I'm like, okay, Let's give it a go. Paul says that that new Aswani signature Charvel has the your Wilkinson trem on it. Well, I was the first one to do it, but it's not my bridge, so I support Trevor and his, it's getting out there, and other people are using it. And that fellow's a great guitar player, and so, cool guitar. I like his, I think it's Nitro, I read, the finish on his guitar. And it's got a matching headstock. It's silver. It's real cool looking. 2 humbucker Charvel kind of situation. Any suggestions there from Peter with the super chat? He says, any suggestions on a great 212 cab with greenback and V30? I don't know if anybody does a mix or not. I mean, you could order an Avatar, probably, with that mix, because they sell the speakers and the cabs. I would probably go that route. I don't know that anybody does it. Friedman might have one. We don't do... Oh, my cab has that. My PT15 has that. I was thinking like the horizontal one doesn't have it. We use H75s, but I forgot completely that my cabinet has for the PT15. God, what an idiot I am. That's so stupid. My 412 has it. And so we do the greens in the top and the V30s in the bottom. But my 212 for the PT15 is like this, like a horizontal. And the greens in the top and the V30s in the bottom. And the Sir guys will love that. Watch for 30 seconds while I forget my own cabinet that has that exact blend. Yeah. Oh, well, the show's live. That's what you get. Half-Baked Duke says that he had a new guitar yesterday with Sir Pete Thorn signature. Oh, wow. With Ocean Turquoise finish. Amazing. Congratulations and thank you for getting the guitar. I hope it provides you with years of enjoyment. Do you still have a cab with Scumbags? A couple. I have a 112. I have a 412 Port City that has those speakers in it, M75s. Yep. Kyle says, how does a Tele bridge affect that pickup's tone? I don't really know that. I'm not a Tele expert. I only have a couple. And there's stuff to do with the base plate and the bridge, and I can't... That's one thing I shouldn't speak to because I'm just not sure. Here, Richard says, the bridge on a Tele can make all the difference in the world. I think people talk a lot about the saddles, like brass saddles, and the different... Well, talk amongst yourselves. There might be some Tele players in here that know more than me. But I'm no expert in it. My 66 Tele has... Ron Ellis pickups in it, the 50-60 set with the mid-tall neck, and I love that. That's all I know. The pickups were both kind of screwed up in that guitar. I would need to get them fixed. The one has a warped base plate, and that makes them microphonic, so the bridge pickup was just kind of there but unusable, and the neck pickup developed a short. So, old Fender pickups, sometimes these things happen. So I would need to get them looked at by somebody like Fralin. I should probably just send them to Fralin and have him rewind the neck or fix it if he can by connecting wherever it's probably broken, and see if he can do something with the base plate. Somebody like that probably be good, But the Ron Ellis pickups that I put in it made that guitar phenomenal, just 3D. It sounds fantastic. But I'm just not sure about how the bridge affects the tone and stuff. I don't know that much about that. I figured whatever was in the original one is what I want, if it's brass saddles and whatever it is. I don't even know I think it's steel saddles in mine. The 66. I don't know everything, damn it. It's kind of funny. People ask me a lot of questions, and sometimes I'm like, no expert area in that. Does EVH as a brand use stainless steel frets? Yeah, I believe they do. In everything. I mean, I think all my EVH stuff here has stainless steel. That was Ed's thing. I mean, after they came out, they started using them, and I remember my first gen, Fender made EVH Wolfgang has them. Have you ever tried the Future Factory Delay? I haven't personally tried it, but I know Friedman's a big fan of it, and folks that use them seem to really like them. That's one pedal company I haven't done anything with, but I'd like to. I like the aesthetics of it and stuff, and Friedman speaks highly of them. So I think Alistrada uses one of those. Free the tone delays. I should ask him what he thinks of it. Obviously, he likes it if he uses it. Would you bring back videos where to speak about guitars, amps? I think a lot of us found that. I did that one video. I think you're talking about the one I did on my 335. That did really well. You're right. I need to do probably one on my old Strat and some other guitars that are important to me. But yeah, that's a good idea. There's one in particular that I want to do on this EVH Music Man Eddie Van Halen model that I have here. So that's the next one that I have to do. I'm just so slammed with videos at the moment. With the Tonex one was something I really had to get done. And now I've got other ones that I'm under a deadline to get done. And I put a lot of pressure on myself because it's like, I don't have a ton of touring coming up, but I've got a 5-day jaunt that I got to go to England for. And then I've got a month from June to July that I got to go do. And all that feels like a weight because it's like I got a lot of videos I got to get done. And, people that hit me up to make things. And so I always feel this pressure to put those first. But it's kind of important for my channel, I feel like, to do exactly what you're talking about, which is a little bit more of the, the ones that are always the most viewed and kind of interesting to people, I think, are the sort of like historical labor of love, like the Randy Rhoads guitar or the Steve Vai Jose amp, or the, those videos do Eddie Van Halen tone deep dives. Those do really good on my channel because I think people just get the guitar geek aspect of it and the heart and soul of like what we're all here doing right now, talking about this stuff. And so, those types of videos are really, really important for me to do too, to take a few days and just get one of those, because it's just, that's, obviously I do a lot for products, it's just part of my livelihood these days. But there's always got to be a balance, I guess, so. Have you actually had to refret a Sir with stainless steel? No, never. And I've got a lot of, guitars that I've had for a long time now that, it's like, the most minimal amount of fretware that I would never dream of, like, oh, this needs a refret, with anything that I've got from them that's stainless steel. So, oh, hi there, Anari. Thanks for the super chat. Thank you, Pete. Always a pleasure to stay a while and listen, chipping in for coffee fun. Thank you. Yeah, I actually got to go buy some. I'm drinking kind of black cut. Well, a lot of sugar, but it's not black. It's sugary. We were out of cream today, so. It's a little sweet, actually. I went a little overboard with the sugar. Ugh, too much sugar. Had a lot of coffee before I got here already, so. Anyways, I'm fairly far back in the chat, so let's see. JJ says Andy Timmons was hesitant about stainless steel until he tried them on his signature Ibanez. Now he really likes them. Yeah, that's the thing. The feel and the consistency of them is fantastic, Yeah. Just John Sir's texting me, so I'm just answering him really quick. Right for... Yeah. All right. Did you catch Landau last week at the Potato? I did. He was ferocious. Man, he was killing. You want to see a second of it, actually? He had this tone going during this one. Let me just find this this one clip here. Let me see. It was on the LA Vintage Gear, because I saw Cliff there. Here it is. Oop. Let me reload that. psychedelic freakout. It's cool, man. That was the loudest moment of the whole set. Renegade Destruction. It's so cool. I love Mike. I like, he gets this tone going that's got a bunch of mod on it that's really warbling, and then he plays lead with it. It's so cool. It's like, because it makes it sound like he's vibratoing all the time. So even when he's playing fast, he's like, and the sound's kind of going ooh the whole time while he's playing. It's so cool. His little tricks are like really cool. You know, it's like halfway through that solo, it sounded like he switched in like a slap delay or a reverb with a bunch of pre-delay that slaps back. And he'll just, nobody switches up the sounds as good as Landau, man. He's always like constantly changing his pick attack and the pickups and the effects, and then varying his delay, and it's just like, it makes for such contrast, and it's so cool. Like the contrast in his ideas are like so magical. If you haven't seen him at the Big Potato, try and go sometime, because it's, if you really like fun improvisational guitar, it's so amazing. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. What else we got here? I'm gonna move down the chat a little bit because I know I'm far back here. Speaking of replacing band members, I always want to see a Beatles tour with Paul, Ringo, Julian, and Donnie. It'd be interesting. I mean, I kind of like, I don't know. You know what? It's interesting you bring that up. I watched the other day. Britt and I were talking, and she wasn't aware of the 90s documentary surrounding the release of Free as a Bird and Real Love. Do you guys remember that? A lot of people don't remember it and even know that it exists, it seems like. That the three remaining Beatles before George passed away got together in the 90s and did basically two new Beatles songs with these early like late 70s demo recordings that John Lennon had done on a cassette deck. Like a little mini cassette recorder, you know, and he'd recorded himself playing these songs, Free as a Bird and Real Love. And then they took those tapes, and this is kind of pre-Pro Tools. Were able to take those tapes, restore them, and get them to a state where they actually cut to... They must have, you know, I think Ringo was talking about having to play to a click and how it pissed him off and stuff. But they must have generated a click somehow and cut to the, you know, the recording of John and finished these songs built around him. And it's an amazing thing, you know. And then I remember watching the documentary when I was I was living in my cheapest apartment that I'd ever lived in LA at the time. And I was just on the cusp of actually signing the first record deal I ever got, that basically when I became a professional musician, you know. And I remember watching in that apartment and watching the on a little TV that I had that was like this big, watching that Beatles documentary and just being so fascinated with it because I was such a Beatles fan. And then it was over 3 nights or something, and there was like, you know, 3 2-hour episodes, kind of almost like that Get Back thing that came out last year. That documentary, which was also terrific. But anyways, I just remember sitting there watching this over the 3 nights, then it all kind of culminated in the new songs, these new Beatles songs. And it was so exciting. And then I thought, everything that's happened to me in my, like, I remember I was only in that little apartment for like 6 months, and then finally signed this deal and then moved on and you know, my whole life changed that year, basically. And I just remember thinking, like, everything that's happened to me in my career has basically happened since then, since that moment, basically. Like, everything has, you know, it just was a weird marker because I hadn't listened to the songs really since then. And I remember just, yeah, I don't know, it's just a weird little thing. But you bring up anything happening with the Beatles, and it was, if you haven't seen it, go on YouTube and watch anything about, you know, the Beatles' Real Love or Beatles' Free as a Bird documentary. Jeff Lynne produced it. It's really cool. And I mean, I love the tunes, and the videos are really great for both songs that they came up with. It's just so cool. It's like such a, I don't know, Beatles is magic, you know. It's like, when you watch the videos, that's what the videos really were done so well. Like, you know, kind of pulling you into that world. And if you were a big Beatles fan like I was, it was just really great. But yeah, doing it with the children of, I don't know if it ever, quite works. I don't know. I mean, if it would be weird or, Julian and Donnie, I don't know, I think it probably would have happened if it was, if it was a viable thing, and it didn't probably happen for a reason, I'm sure, we wouldn't be the first ones to wish for that kind of thing. And in that camp, there must have been a lot of discussion about whether or not something like that would ever happen. Then it just never did, probably for a good reason. I don't know. But anyways, Octopus here says Chris Cornell wrote everything in Soundgarden. Well, that's not exactly true. A big part of the sound, for example, I used the 4th of July example. Like, you're not going to get those parts and that execution without those. Like, I really don't think that Chris wrote Ben's bass line. You know what I mean? And it's such a massive part of why the song sounds like that. Maybe, obviously he wrote his lyrics, vocal melody. Maybe that was his guitar riff. But the way it was executed, and then the execution of the parts and everybody's contributions to a song like that, I don't even know the songwriting credits on that song, whether anyone else is credited or all four of them, or it's just him or what. But you're not going to get that execution of the parts and the cumulative effect without those guys. There's just no way. A big part of the sound of that band is that chemistry. It's Chris's brilliance vocally, his writing and melodic sense and all that kind of stuff. But without Kim's guitar, which can be in its own, like, very psychedelic, and sometimes tonally it can be a bit of an ice pick, in the, you know what I mean? But that's part of the sound that's so great. Then Chris's guitar kind of holding down the fort sort of thing. So you got the psychedelic chaos of Kim kind of thing. Chris's guitar holding down the fort. Ben making some extremely unusual choices over there and coming at you like an ogre on the bass sometimes, And then Matt, who's like really, really accomplished on the drums and just kind of great instincts, and like his musicality and incredible. He was obviously the most technical of the band, and probably, versatile and just like a powerhouse back there. So when you got that kind of powerhouse combined with someone like Kim with his psychedelic kind of, you get a very unique, and you whoever wrote the song, you change either one of those elements or any of the four elements, you get a very different thing. So chemistry is so important. I talked with Chris about this one day. I can clearly remember a phone conversation where he was talking about the respect for that and how important it was to him, and how he came around to realizing that even with interband dynamics and how it can be difficult and frustrating sometimes, and dealing with the problems that can come up, how it was all worth it. He was like very appreciative of the other guys. This is in 2015, maybe 2015, 2014. I remember this conversation where he was like, it's all like around when King Animal came out. He was like, it's all very like, it's worth it. Like, it's worth the struggle. They're all older now. They'll get along better and everything. It's like old things can crop up, but it was like they've gotten past a lot of stuff, moved on, and then it's all worth it, for the result, like that creative result that comes out. You can't get any other way. So, I think Matt wrote Mailman. Matt wrote a lot, I do believe, What's Corey Wong's story? He seemed to come out of nowhere. I don't really know. He, around the time that I remember sort of seeing these, like, what's the band, Wolfpack, and this sort of like funky, super funky, fun stuff coming out. And he just kind of rose to notoriety, like, then, and like I'm not sure where he came from or anything, but obviously he was very accomplished at doing the super funky thing, and it was just fun. I think that he's so good at it that that it just was like fun and different, and guitar, maybe distorted shred guitar or whatever. That's still a thing, and there's fans of it and people like that. But there was a different sound, that maybe that super fun, funky thing, the clean thing, sort of never goes out of style, I don't think. I mean, all based in, what Chic and Nile came up with originally. And there was a bit of a resurgence of that anyway with like Daft Punk and stuff. And then like a bit of a resurgence, a huge thing, really. And then just kind of riding on that, because it's fun. It's like, it sounds good. It makes you feel good when you hear it, that kind of music. And I think that it was just the right time, right place. Plus, he seems like a pretty savvy guy, very, good at getting out there in social media and speaking, and he's funny. He's like, so it just kind of all came together, and it's like a right time for him, I think. So, yeah. What are good music cities for an aspiring player besides Nashville and LA? I mean, there might be some folks out there that have a good handle on that. I don't know about like, scenes that are like seem really happening right now. But those are for me, Nashville or LA, at least for what I do, are the only ones. I mean, in Canada, Toronto, if you're going to be in England, I guess it's London, or Liverpool. Liverpool's really cool for, because the college is there and there's a lot of great musicians up there and stuff. But if you're talking about the United States, I mean, not really sure these days, if there's like where there's a scene happening. I guess seems like a minute since there's been a scene centered in a city, that is like everybody goes there to try and make it. Yeah. Do you have any favorite UFC fighters? I'm not really into UFC. I do remember meeting this kid in Canada once that was like, I say kid because he was probably like, early 20s when I was like late 30s, but he came to a Cornell gig and he was really nice. And I remember meeting him afterwards. And we were out having a couple of drinks at a bar afterwards, and he was there, and he was like the hometown hero because he was this UFC like heavy duty, fighter guy that had done really well. And it was in London, Ontario, I remember. And he goes, like, I'll sit around having a beer. He goes, push my nose. And I go, what? And he goes, go like this on my nose. And I pushed his nose, and it was nothing there. There was no bone left. It was just, everything. It was just a squishy mesh, And I'm like, oh my God, dude. And he's like, yeah, it's like completely gone, And he said, yeah, man. He goes, I appreciate what you do. He goes, it must be cool to be up there and not everybody want to kill you. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, when I go into a fight and I'm like, yeah, because half the audience like is cheering for your death, basically. I was like, oh God, yeah. At least we don't have that when we get up on stage, generally speaking. But he was a cool kid. But I don't really know anything about that world. It freaks me out watching that stuff, to be honest. Let's see. Peter says that Beinhorn was meant to work with Big Wreck after Super Unknown and told them to go back and write better songs like he did with Cornell, but they refused to listen, so it didn't happen for In Loving Memory of. Interesting. I don't know that history of it, but yeah, Big Wreck obviously did. They had their success in Canada and did really well up there, and now continue to make music and do their thing, and it's. Yeah. Is this Pete Thorn, the guitarist? Where is the music? This is like watching the news. Psycho-intellectual. Somebody tell Psycho-intellectual what we generally do here. It is like watching the news. We talk a lot more than play on my show. It's an interview show. Or not an interview show because I haven't had guests for a while, I guess. But it's where we talk about music and we talk about guitar and stuff. And everybody kind of, spurs me on in the chat with interesting. It's its own thing. It's become its own thing. I've done it 267 times now, I think, over the past going on 6 years. So welcome and enjoy, but it might not be for you. And I'm okay with that. We can't be all things to all people. Peter Lasis with the super chat. All things being the same, how would you describe the tone difference between traditional bent saddles versus the locking ones you have in your signature guitars? The locking ones, when I put them on a guitar that actually had bent saddles, so this was on my White Sur I took off on, it was a white Sur 6-screw base plate, Wilkinson bridge, but a vintage style bridge with the bent saddles and 6 screws. I put the Wilkinson saddles on there, and I'll be damned if that guitar didn't get louder and more resonant, as well as staying in tune better. It just had more. It was like putting just more on the guitar. So that's what I've found. They sound really good, those locking saddles. So, Jay Rosman says, did you try the Ruby Celestion speaker? No, I'm about to, though, because I'm about to review something that has one in a 112. I have heard them. It's just that I've heard them in cabinets that, like, Friedman's using them, and I've heard them in his shop. He's using them in a lot of combos these days. They have a kind of a, I know that he feels like he's got more experience with it than me, and he describes it as kind of a greenback kind of thing. But they sound rather dark to me, as is the case with quite a lot of high power handling speakers. They tend to sound darker, I find, generally speaking. But he really likes it, and he thinks they sound great in a combo that can be kind of, in a combo, he feels like sometimes things can be kind of bright and whatever anyway. So they tend to work well in combos, in his opinion. So I'm going to try one. I'll get back to you. I'll let you know. There's a Soldano situation, a video that I'm going to make that I got to use one of these cabinets, and so you will see that soon. What do you think of Egnator amp? So we were just talking about Bruce. He's a really talented guy, and I like the Egnator M4 preamp that I have a lot. I had one of his, I've had a lot of the Randall Bruce Egnator designed stuff. Like, I still have one of the 100-watt heads with the 3 modules. I have an M4, that's the Egnator preamp. And I know Friedman speaks really highly as well of the IE4 as being a terrific preamp, and probably one of the best preamps that ever came out of that era when preamps were kind of a thing, late 90s, early 2000s. Having the most usable kind of channels and stuff. Yeah. Okay, what else we got here? Let's see. Any tips on boosting a good lead tone? Thanks for the super chat there, David. I get a good crunchy rhythm tone, but it sounds thin for solos. Yeah, that can be a common thing, especially with Marshalls. The sound that sounds stringy and clear on chords can be a little thin. So I like a Klon for that. Don't look any further, really. Good mid-boost, overdrive. Klon definitely is sort of more lower mid, I find, and it makes the notes fat. So try an Archer or a Tumnus. Archer from Rocket, Tumnus from Wampler, Sick As from Bondi can be really nice. Or I'm currently using a what's it called? The Unobtainium or something? No, is that what it's called? I don't remember what the pedal's called, actually. The one on my board. That's Crazy Tube Circuits. Yeah, Unobtainium. It's a dual pedal that has a Klon-y side and a Dumble-y side. Works really well for that thing that you're talking about. Awesome show, says Justin. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Somebody said it sounds like, this fella says it sounds like watching the news. You ain't hearing any music. I don't do that here, really. Is that okay? Are we okay? Are we going to be okay with that? We talk about stuff. I answer a lot of questions about gear, or, I've got a ground loop. How do I solve it? What pedal should I use for da-da-da-da-da? That's what I do here. What? You don't know everything? No. Why are we here then? I know. I don't know why you're here, honestly. Everybody just sign off. Don't listen to another word I say. Don't know what I'm talking about. Any experience with Pariah pickups? Yes, I can speak to that. When I did the big EVH pickup shootout, I got 2 Pariah models, maybe 3 actually, now that I think about it, because I think he sent me one of his takes on a distortion. But they were some of my favorites, and they were packaged beautifully. They're beautifully made. You can tell, like, a lot of attention to detail. And both the kind of 9K that he calls the Pasadena White, which was his, sort of like an EVH and then the 14K, which is more like a Frankenstein style. Both those pickups sounded really good to me. I'm very impressed with both of them. And I believe he sent me a distortion version too. I think. Maybe not. I don't remember. But you can watch the video and you'll see. I can't remember last week, let alone 2 years ago. Have you played any Chase Bliss pedals? Yes, I've done a few videos for Chase Bliss. Got the Mood recently. It's a fun. Everybody talks about that one. I haven't tried that one. But I've got the Reverb, the big one with the sliders that is amazing. I did a video for that and I loved it. The preamp pedal is one of the greatest. I've got both those pedals and I keep meaning to put them on a board, like make a little weird board that's kind of for, weird. When I say weird, I mean like an experimental board for recording to get interesting sounds. I don't even know if I'll put a switcher on it, just pedals for like recording. And I was thinking I put the Sir Discovery delay on there, the Chase Bliss big old reverb with the sliders, the big old preamp with the sliders, and then pick a few other like key, interesting, maybe like a vibe. I've got that Seymour Duncan analog phaser. That might be nice to go on there. Just some, to get some like interesting stuff going on. Maybe a rotary pedal of some sort. Something ring moddy or something. Just like a weird board, experimental board. Yeah. Favorite local amp tech besides Friedman? I don't know where Blankenship is, but he's always good for Marshalls and Fenders. I'm not sure if where he is now. People talk about Bob Dixon. A lot of people seem to like him. I've never met him, but he gets a lot of, I know a lot of people take their amps there, my friends. So you might look for him. Anyone else? I don't know. In this area, I'm not coming up with anyone else. Those are the guys that I'm thinking of. Okay. I'm going to move down through this chat. Don't forget to hit the like, says Ben. Even the guy that says I should play more. Hit that like if you're here still. Ross with a super chat. Thank you, my friend. You have talked about how passionate Japanese are about music. Familiar with Bandmaid? Yes. Astoundingly talented all-female rock band. Agreed. I like them. Yeah, I mean, I love that a little bit of this music is kind of getting out there and becoming, as K-pop got out there and then kind of opened the world to, I don't know, it's like other styles are getting out there and there's metal and, people know about Bandmaid and, it's just, I saw so much cool music while I was over there. I was blown away by, yeah. Okay, what else we got here? Let's see. What else? Looking through the chat. I've had two Sirs since 2008, and solid state frets don't even need recrowning, let alone refretting. Agreed. Yeah, same with me. Yeah, if demo videos are your factory's product, then Amson's own videos are like building maintenance and consumer support. Yeah, I think they're just the most interesting to people. Is the deal. So, okay, what else we got? Steven, I think you're talking about Landau. His tone has tons of sustain, but not too dirty. It's just volume, I mean, he plays good and loud at the Potato. Proper gig volume. I love it. Love it. What else are you guys talking about? Decline and Fall of Western Civilization, Part 1 and 2. Great. I haven't watched those in a long time. I should watch again. Kim says, I saw that Beatles doc back in the 90s. It's a cool thing to go back and rewatch if you haven't. It's neat. It's neat to see them in their, what would be their 50s, I guess, right? They're still so young. It's like, it's wild because at the time we would have thought, oh, the Beatles are getting older. And now it's just like, God, they look like kids. It's really great. Brian with a super chat. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. I love your vibe playing in your channel. I know you love EVH. Have you ever met him? Oh, that moved. Sorry. Yeah, I did. He was a lovely guy, and I got to be friendly with him from about 2009 through when he passed away. So, and I got a lot of great memories and about just conversations and hangs, and he was I really have nothing but good things to say. So he was a special dude. Ed was like, it was weird. It was like, I guess you have to do this sometimes, but like you couldn't be there and pull the what was it, like the Chris Farley, like, remember when you recorded that one solo? That was so cool. So you kind of intentionally go, all right, don't freak out. This is your hero, so get out of that zone. And so you do. And then you kind of like, when you're spending time with folks like that, you sort of like, once you leave and then later on you realize like, that was so-and-so. You remember your hero from when you were a kid? It's almost like they're a different person when you're, I don't know, like, unless they're playing guitar, which is like, and that didn't happen very often, but a couple times in particular where he'd pick up the guitar and just be like, oh my God, like, that's the guy, It's weird. I have this like different, it's like it's almost like two people. I don't know how else to describe it. Let's see. What's your hope for your future career? Do you think you can keep in the music business in these tough times? Well, I've constantly straddled, and I mean, for a long time I was just like touring guitar player, session guitar player, and I wasn't in the musical instrument world at all. That was sort of, the late 90s through the mid 2000s, and then all of a sudden I got pulled back into MI a little bit, musical instrument industry. And that has become more and more and more a part of what I'm back into doing. And I guess I really enjoy that. I love this. I love talking about pedals and guitars and tones and all that stuff, but I still love, like, obviously playing and touring. So it's just trying to strike a balance. I'm fully aware that I've probably like aged out of doing certain gigs. I'm not going to get like called to play with like 22-year-old pop stars and stuff like that. And the sort of that marches on. And as the bands get older, like probably my gigs are, I don't know. I mean, I'd love to do whatever work, but it's like if it's legacy bands or older bands or stuff like that want to hire me, if somebody still, needs a guitar player, I'm going to go, I'm going to go do it. And I'm fine with all that, but the music instrument thing, the thing about it that I've found, like being in this world a little bit, is it's still a product-based kind of thing. And I can combine so in other words, like with music has become, it's changed in the time that I've, been in the music business so much, because nobody buys it anymore. That's just the fact, It's like there's not nearly as much money in producing and selling and, music as there once was. So, artists of all sorts have turned to different ways to, be it tie-ups with companies or how, more touring, obviously. Can't replace that. Well, I guess you can with holograms, but you know what I'm saying. Playing live shows, selling tickets, selling T-shirts, selling, whatever, selling VIP packages, all that kind of stuff. So for me, my version of that has kind of been, I guess, because I think I'm good at it. I mean, I like, this stuff that we do here, talking about, designing pedals and coming up with new ideas and things. And I feel like I've got ideas and things that can be useful for musicians. My guitar design or the PT-15 or ideas I have for other things that hopefully will come to fruition, that are, and those are actually physical things that people, if they're excited about and feel like they can use, will pay for. So that for me is something that, as I get older, doesn't stop, because I could still be 70 and do that. As long as I stay current and I don't get jaded and think about, there's plenty of examples of this, of people in the industry that work in that end of things until they're quite old. So I guess that's probably what I hope to do. I would still love to join a band and write songs, It's like my number one love when it comes to making music is writing and producing. So when you hear me make these little songs that you hear me doing, silly pedal videos or whatever, it's like I put the same amount of dedication into that as I would into recording a song for a record. It's really fun for me. So, I've always hoped that one of these days somebody's going to come along and go, dude, like, we could use a guy like you and it'll be a great situation, like a band situation. So that's something that I hope happens, but just the more of that I can do, the better. And there's projects I've been talking to, for later this year with people about kind of on that tip. So the key to this business is staying diversified these days. Do a little touring sessions, work in this world that I'm, there's a lot of stuff. Like if you can stay diverse, it keeps you busy and on your toes, and it can be confusing too, but it's like, it's just good to be diverse, I think, and not put all your eggs in one basket, be it being a studio player or being I'm going to go on tour. Well, then you're always going to wait. I want to be a touring guy. Okay, you're always going to be waiting for the next gig and somebody to call you and very rely on other people, and you have to leave town then to make money, which can be hard on a family and hard on, it's just, you're constantly in that. I was that guy for a while, and it's not always fun when you're, the tour's wrapping up, you lose your gig, you're waiting for that next audition, you're calling your friends, you're putting the word out, and you're always relying on somebody to take you on the road. Being a session player is kind of like that. You're always relying on a producer or whoever to call you up. Hey, I got something for you next week. If you're going to do that, you need like 6 producers that constantly hire you, just because one guy will go off and get a deal for 6 months making a record with a big rock band, and then they don't need you, So working for one producer doesn't work, it won't keep you employed. Might for a while, but then like they're going to get busy doing something else. And so yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Arthur says John Lennon wrote everything in Soundgarden. Oh my God. Yeah, that's right. Gordon Lightfoot passed away last week. That's a great loss. He was a terrific singer-songwriter I saw a great Bob Dylan quote where he said, I'd never heard a Gordon Lightfoot song that I didn't like, There's a high praise from high-level singer-songwriter right there, he was a Canadian legend. Every highway. Good stuff. I remember those songs growing up. Like, my mom listened to a lot of AM radio, and it was like, I didn't, it's like Neil Young and stuff. I didn't like it till I got older, and then I realized how great it was. Once you get a greater appreciation for Frank Sinatra and all these things my mom would listen to when I was a kid, that I was like, oh, put on some rock music. And then like you realize how great it was later. So, yeah. Okay, what else we got here? Let's see. Some people are saying Atlanta and New York City are good music scenes. Minneapolis. Those are kind of some classics. I haven't toured the U.S. that much in the last few years, so I don't know. I don't get to these places and get out to shows much, but I am going to be in Atlanta pretty soon. Get to do a little touring again this summer in the U.S. That's nice. Just last summer I did, and this summer I did a little bit. It's good to be out in the U.S. again, getting around a little bit. Wow, I'm pretty far back, aren't I, in the chat? So, once again, just ask a question again if I've missed it, because I'm going to move down in the chat, so I'm so far behind. I'm about 20 minutes behind with where I am here. So Rick Lewis there with a super chat. Inexperience with the Crowther hotcake? Only a little bit. Another guitar player had one in a band that I was in years ago. People seem to... that was a really popular pedal like 15 years ago. But I don't know that much about it. I remember Rusty Anderson, I think, liked it. He plays with Paul McCartney. But, yeah, I've never owned one, so... Yeah. Okay. What else we got here? Uh, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Let's see. Just made a plate of nachos and an adult beverage. That sounds pretty good on a Sunday afternoon. Do it. Do you have anything with WCRs? I had Crossroads in my Les Paul for a while. They were cool. I would probably like them more now than I did then. They sounded a little dark to me back then. But they were cool. I just remember them being rather warm, and I wanted them like a more stringy, open thing. And then recently I've grown to appreciate the warmer PIF varieties. But it's been a minute, so I would have to listen to them again. I did hear a set of Wagner WCR pickups in the fellow from Scumbag Speakers, Jim. He's got a beautiful SG Special from the early 60s, and it's got a pair of WCR P90s in it, and I love that guitar. Jim, if you ever watch this, sell me that guitar. It's such a great SG Special. I mean, it's just, the neck on it is to die for. It's that wide, somewhat, still full, but somewhat thin, wide thing that Gibson did in 64, or kind of this, around that period. And it's so comfortable and fast and just really great. Tony says, why does Steve Vai choose to play a few choice guitars when he has the world to choose? Well, I would say on recordings he probably plays a lot of different guitars. During the pandemic, when you saw him do some different things, like he played on a Strat style Ibanez, a 3-single coil with no tremolo and stuff, and then he did something on a semi-hollow guitar, I remember, and he used some different stuff for different sounds. But live, you kind of want the old standbys that you can count on. That's like an old friend that's going to deliver. So I kind of do the same thing. I take my red new Signature with me these days, or my red double humbucker. That's a great, they're both really good guitars for doing the jobs that I need to do. The ones that you can count on, and they stay in tune and they feel great, and yeah, yeah. So I would say it's the same thing. He probably just falls in love with one or the other, and most guitar players do that. When you think about Eddie Van Halen, he could have played anything, but he generally, that beat up Kramer he chose for most of the 80s. One guitar, or the Frankenstein that was constantly changing, but that lasted for a number of years. Yeah. Lifelong fan asked about the Tonex. Is it the best modeler for the money? It's great at what it does. It doesn't, obviously, it's, when you say the best modeler for the money, it's like, it depends what you need, because if you've got $3.99 to spend, let's say, for the pedal, but you're like, but I want delay and reverb. Well, it doesn't do those things. So, it's got reverb, but it's like delay and chorus and compression and other effects, right? It's an amp sound box, basically, and pedal sound box. So it depends on what your needs are. I always tell people, these things are they're like cars. They're like BMWs and Mercedes and Volvos, and they're all great, and they'll all get you from A to B so good these days. But one's going to have a certain combination of features that's right for you. So, the best modeler for the money might be a HX Stomp for you if you need more effects and you need bass rigs as well as guitar. Well, I guess you can do bass rigs in it, but you know what I'm saying. If you need a shimmer reverb in your sound, well, it's in the HX effects, but it's not going to be in the Tonex. So, but if you want to capture your own amps and put them in a box, or capture your own pedals and put them in the box, for the money, it is the best. Yes, because it's the most inexpensive and does a really, really good job. So if I had the choice, if I'm going to go do a gig, which one am I going to take? For me these days, it's the Quad Cortex. I can fit it in my backpack, and everything is included on the thing. The touchscreen is so easy. I've captured my own amps into it, and it's like there's so many great things it's got going for it. So it just depends, on your needs. It's a time of abundance that we live in. Tommy Vaughn says, Pete Thorn fan here. Nice to have you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Ever crossed paths with the band Kitty in your career? I remember that name, but I don't remember why. you ever play anywhere near Temecula Valley? I mean, Temecula is kind of out by where Sur is, actually, in Elsinore. So I've been to Temecula, like the town there and stuff. I was there recently for a country festival that Britt was actually playing drums with a band. Well, it was probably almost a year ago now, but I don't know where it is. I've been there, but I don't know that I've ever played in Temecula. I played around there. I mean, it's close to Morongo and all that, the casino, and I played there with Henley and maybe with Melissa Etheridge. Kind of in that area, isn't it? I think that's close to there. Probably be the closest I've played. Okay. I miss amps in the zone. More coming. More will come. When you're on tour, do you use in-ear monitors or wedges? Spoke quite a bit on that subject, so I won't get too into it. But generally speaking, use wedges if I can. Sometimes in-ears are what you need to use. For that, I've been using these... Oh, God, now I'm going to forget the name of them. What are the in-ears I use, guys? The ones that are based on the Sensophonics. ARS, AIS. Oh, God. I forget things so quick these days. Somebody help me out with the in-ears that I use, because I know I've told you guys about them before. But anyway, it's the brand with the ability to mix in outside sound, because they have mics in them. So you can blend in a little bit of the, or a lot of the ambient sound of the room. And I really like those. Those are cool. That said, I have a set of these new Ultimates coming. Ultimate ears that are called UE Professional Ultimate something or other. Get this. They have 21 or 22 drivers in them. Now, I've railed against in-ears with too many drivers in the past. I've said I don't like it because they sound too bassy and they sound crazy to me. Well, I tried a set of these at NAMM because they asked me to come by. A fellow there that works there said, we want you to hear these. And I tried them and they sounded amazing. They sounded super balanced all the way through the whole 20 to 20K kind of thing. And when I tried a set of UE7s, which I've got pairs of, they're 3-driver, the standard kind of UEs, they sounded good. They're a decent sounding in-ear monitor. They sounded good, but not nearly as detailed and a little kind of just not nearly as good through the mids. And I'm used to, the problem that I had with the in-ears with lots of drivers before is they were all bass. They just sounded like, which, for some styles of music, some people might like, but I could not hear what was going on with guitars on the ones in the past I've tried with 12 drivers and that kind of thing. These just sounded like rich through the mids and balanced from the lows all the way through the highs without any kind of chaos going on. They're quite expensive, but they're making them as their flagship product, and they asked me to do a review of them. So I'm going to do it based on using them to mix and using them to listen to music as well, like on, airplanes or when because that's a thing. Like when I travel and I do videos and stuff, even when I'm on the road, I need to be able to mix, and I need to be able to, get good results that sound balanced and stuff in hotel rooms sometimes, when I'm completing projects and stuff. So it's not just for live. These are made for, they're like making them for engineers and mixing engineers and reference kind of, But I'll probably also use them live sometimes. I'll tell you when I've got these in-ears that I've used, like I say, with the microphones in them for a number of years. But when I'm doing, you need an extra pack with those. That's the only thing, because they've got their own electronics and stuff for the ambient signal. So it's a little more complicated with the extra pack and stuff. So if I just need to use in-ears on a couple songs, which is the case like with Classic Rock Show, the band I play with over in England, I only need in-ears for occasional, like maybe 3 songs in the set. That is when, I'm probably like, don't want to deal with the extra pack, the ambient system and charging and doing all that. All I need to do is get click track and be able to hear for 3 or 4 songs. In that case, these Ultimates, I probably just use those because it's simpler and easier for me. One less thing to deal with the extra pack and all that. Still love doing the ambient thing. If I've got a stage where I got to use a modeler or where I can't you use a wedge for whatever reason, they just don't have them or something, then the ambient ears are great because you can blend in the crowd at whatever level you want. It's just a different experience. So, I still love wedges, though. It's just, I'm old school. I like to hear the crowd. I like to hear the guitar coming out of the PA. I like to be able to mix myself by walking closer to the drums and all those things that when you put in-ears in become an issue. What's your favorite affordable but professional single cut or LP style guitar? You know, I don't look for that a lot. Like I just use, what I've got and stuff. And it's like, but in that world, the ones that I've tried, I have to say the PRS does a nice job, with the SE stuff. So I would probably look at like the single cut SE or something for an affordable, under or $1,000 or find them used for whatever they are. Brit actually has one, and it's a pretty damn good guitar, I must say. Pretty nice for the money, nice neck, and so I'm gonna hand it to them for what they do. The SE stuff's pretty nice, I think. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Nathan says that Grandma heard Bark in the Moon the other day and really liked it. Thoughts on Jakey Lee? Jake was great. He was a ripper. He was so cool. Had a great style, and really liked. The solo on Bark of the Moon is incredible. That's great. And the rhythm guitar is really interesting too, because the chord voicings are so unique when you nail it down, really see what he's doing. Have you ever been to a concert and said, this is way too loud? Yeah. The one that really stands out is I went to see Bob Rock play with his band Rockhead in the early 90s in Vancouver at a club, and I couldn't stay. I stayed for 2 songs, and it was absurd how loud it was in there. And we went into the parking lot, and I love loud guitar, but I was like, this is absolutely punishing in here right now. We went out in the parking lot, and it was like, the parking lot with the door open on the club was like the level of a normal show. So I was like, I can't, I just can't. My friends were like, my friend's a drummer, and he was like, that is crazy. Like they were just like so loud. I don't know what Bob was thinking. Great respect for Bob Rock, but it was bonkers. It was probably around the time that they were doing the Black Album and stuff, right? Or was that 91? I guess it may have been a year or two after that. Bob was a really big deal then, actually, I think, because he'd just done Motley Crue and everything, Dr. Feelgood, and then a year or two later, the Black Album came out, and that was absolutely massive. And so he was the hot ticket as far as producers go, that's for sure. So I had to go see it. And I really liked the payola. I didn't know what to expect because I liked the payolas and stuff in the early 2000s, or sorry, early 80s. The early 2000s, the early 80s. Eyes of a Stranger and stuff, and his guitar playing on that was so cool, So I wanted to see what he was doing. Turned out it was loud rock and roll. What speaker should I get if I want to replace the Sheffield 1200s in my 5150 cab? I would probably go, why don't you go Heritage Greenbacks for the new EVH thing, Go with those. That'll work good. Yeah. 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 There's that same comment again. I think you asked that question earlier, right? As far as long-term plan to stay in the music biz. And I think I sort of touched on that. But thank you very much for the super chat. I do appreciate it. Yeah, for me, it's just, the long story short, is diversity. Working in some ways in the musical instrument end of things and development and stuff of things, and then also doing more musical projects, with people. Tours, what I do, just staying diverse. I'm well aware that I'm getting older and that, the next 10 or 15 years is really important. Yeah. Okay. Loudest concert for me was Def Leppard during the stadium tour last year. Really interesting. Motley and stuff. Modern PAs can be really punishing. Those line arrays, if they're loud, and especially if the sound's not good, but even if it is good, they can be very, just really brutally punishing, I find. So it's good to, you guys are recommending some earplugs here and stuff, and I think it's you know, a good thing to have plugs these days. Although I hate them, but I feel like buying vinyl again to get back to having something to read. Yeah, I loved the whole, like growing up and buying records and reading through the jackets and, LP jackets and pulling out the liner notes and stuff. That's a magic part of it. Yesterday, I actually went in a hi-fi store that I've been meaning to get into for a while. I'm always walking by this where I live, and it's like I never get in there because it's always closed by 5 p.m. or something, and I tend to be there in the evening. But yesterday it was open, so I went in, and they have these great kind of curated little systems with, Wharfdale speakers and preamps and amps, nice turntable to get you in, for anywhere from like $1,000 on up to 10 grand, into a nice hi-fi setup. I know you can spend a lot more than that on just a pair of speakers, but I'm not going to do that, But a mid-level, spending a few $1,000s or something on getting into a nice system with a couple of nice speakers and a turntable and an amp is something that I would like to do relatively soon, just to have something nice at home. I've got a nice LP collection that I've had since I was a kid, and in this store they've got a bunch of vinyl, and there's some nice record stores around town now and stuff, and I think it'd be really fun. So I'm gonna get into it one of these days. I just need to rearrange my living room a little bit to make room for it. How do Tonex pedals sound if you add external pedals in front of the pedal? I've heard pretty good. I haven't messed with that a lot, other than a compressor in front, and I guess I messed with drive. Well, I'll tell you what, you heard in the Corey Wong video, you're hearing me run the Corey Wong compressor and boost into Tonex. So how's that sound? I love the way that it sounded. I had no problems with it. I think, I think it's probably dependent on the capture, and it's going to probably respond in a similar way to what the amp would do, They're supposed to anyway. I don't know if it'd be exactly the same, but check out the Tonex video to hear at least that pedal in front of one of my captures. And the Corey Wong video that I put out yesterday for that pedal, I'm running that Corey Wong pedal into Tonex, and you can see what you think of that sound. You've got to be aware, one thing you've got to be aware of, and of course they know this, and so they build it in, but when you use something like the Tonex, it's of course a digital device, so it's going to have an analog to digital converter, and there's going to be a 0 dB, at some point where you're going to clip it. If you boost like crazy into, if you add 20 dB of gain in front of a pedal like the Tonex, or even into your computer interface, to get into your computer, you're obviously at some point you're going to clip, and that's not going to be good. So that's a concern. But most people, when they turn on an overdrive or a distortion, people don't necessarily realize this, but even if it seems to be a bit of a volume bump, you are limiting your peaks, coming out of your pickups at that point. When you hit hard, it's the pedal actually limits. So this may not be as much of a concern, other than clean boost. If you clean boost like crazy into anything that's got, op amps in it, or analog to digital converters, or, it can get ugly when they break up. It's not a good sound. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah, Mesa Guitar Guy says, get several passive streams of income. Agreed. Yeah. What's your preferred delay time for an always-on delay, especially with mid to high gain? That's a great question. For me, my standard, like on my timeline on my board, if I've got I usually do a stereo thing with a split that's 250, 500. So you get a kind of a loosely, if you were to tap it, a quarter note in one side and an eighth in the other. You will find for most tempos that if you tap tempo it, that could be anywhere from 200 to 400 to 250 to 500 to 300 to 600 maybe, on the outside. And that's like most tempos that you'll find that, and, just by tapping in a quarter and setting one side for an eighth and one side for a quarter, that's a nice kind of, around your sound. Now, somebody like Andy Timmons, who's really brilliant, obviously, and great guitar sounds, his halo delay is like a dotted eighth and a quarter, and they are in series, so they feed into one another, and so they become like a a bit more of a reverb-like tail, because he doesn't like the way that, I don't think that if you use like a dotted eighth and a quarter, the way that they'll build up on one another, like in time, he likes a little bit more of it to be a little bit more of a loose thing, I think. So, and to be kind of that cumulative, like when you put two delays in series, they're going to feed into one another. And, if you sort of play constantly through it and then you stop, it almost sounds like a reverb tail, because they're feeding into one another and creating multiple echoes. So that's a cool thing to do too. The classic Van Halen, Echoplex thing, that was about 360 or 370 milliseconds for, that you would hear him use on Van Halen 1 when the echo's on Fire, or Ain't Talking About Love. Some good examples there. And it would be just kind of a one repeat, that mid 300 millisecond thing, 360, 370. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving down in the chat. You guys are talking about Gordon Lightfoot. Let's see, it's 1:30 and I'm at 1:08 in the chat. So why don't I move down a little quicker here? God, a lot of questions this week in comments. So I'm trying. But when you're on, I did this one already. In-ears or wedges. I have an Orville SG, says David Lee, with a neck just like you're describing. That's the Japan-made Gibson line that they didn't ever really bring over to the U.S., but that were sold domestically, and you can find them used sometimes, and they're pretty cool. Orville are some nice guitars. I remember trying a Les Paul Custom once. It was really cool. It was Orville. It was good stuff. For sure. Is there a bright cap mod that can remove low end and not add brightness per se? For example, my Super Black Magic Reverb is voiced on the darker side with lots of low end. Not a bright cap mod, but you could probably have the low end with a coupling cap reduced in the front end easily. If you find it's a little like too much, there'll be coupling caps between the stages, and you can reduce bass there, and that might be to your liking. Generally, it's a pretty easy mod. Not a bright cap per se, but you're right in your assessment that if you reduce bass, all of a sudden everything else comes a little more into focus. And it's a different sound than just turning down the bass control on an amp. That's one way to go. But if you literally filter out the bass with the coupling cap, it's got a different sound, and it'll tighten things up a lot and make it feel a little more articulate. A little less loose under the fingers, and that can be a good thing. Don't want to go too far though, because you just it's a fine line, because at some point then your single notes get thin. Sound a little stringy and thin. Do you have Rickenbackers? No, I've never owned one. I used to borrow some for doing different things. 4001 bass, for example, that I used to borrow, that I played Tuesday nights at Domenico's in Pasadena for years, using a GK bass amp and a 412 cabinet. And I played bass on a natural finish Rick that looked like a Chris Squire, kind of thing. Anyways. What else we got here? I don't know. Your two signature models are the versatile and cover me for anything. Thank you, Jeff. I love them too. All right. Finally there's another, I don't mean to just talk about my own guitar, but let's do it for a second. I got Sir Pete Thorn signature. Unfortunately, this guitar does not stay in tune. Well, I'll take the criticism. Fretwork is also not great, as I can feel small notches in the frets. Is it brand new? Contact cs@sir.com, even if it's not brand new, and they will take good care of you. Yeah. cs@sir.com. Start a warranty ticket. Get it sent back. Have those frets fixed up. Have them look at the tuning. If there's issues with the tuning, if it's an original 510 bridge, I'm guessing your guitar is used, because what can happen on the stainless steel frets is if people don't use the fret protectors that the guitars come with and they just carry them in a gig bag or put them in a case and those strings rattle against the frets. I've had it happen on quite a few of my guitars with stainless steel frets. There will be notches from the string hitting the fret, and that's why they ship them with the fret protector. And it's not a good feeling. And so if that's what you got going on, ding, 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 when you fit, from the little thing in the fret, it's bad. So you need to get that looked at and addressed. And if it's an original 510 bridge, the reason why we went with the new bridge was I never was happy with the tuning stability of a 510. I'm just not. So some people love them, and they seem to, I see Mateus Asado use them. I see different people and they use the bar, and I don't know, man. I can't keep the E string and the G string in tune generally with a 510. That's just me. So when we discovered the Wilkinson, worked great. If your guitar's not staying in tune with the Wilkinson, it's something going on with either the lock saddle isn't done tight enough, because it's a little, there's a little bit to it, just like with the Floyd, where you got to adjust it, and the strings have to be cinched up. Just, you don't want to, because you'll strip it, but you just want to go tight with that and make sure they're good and stretched out. And then looking at the headstock, just make sure everything's breaking properly over, and that there's not, for some reason, the string touching when it's breaking out of the nut, touching the wood behind or anything like that, if the nut's gotten low, or all those kinds of things are really important. But long story short, if you explain this to the customer service folks at SUR and you get the guitar there, they'll take care of all of it for you. It's all warranty stuff. So don't be dissatisfied with it and just live with it as is or sell it or whatever. Give them a shot to make it right, because they're great. Yep. Tell them I sent you. All right. Let's see. I dropped out of MIT when I was released. I was the badass from my hometown. I witnessed the fact that you'll never be like them. They were different. It was a strange time in my life, a serious wake-up. Does that mean at GIT, like MI? Or MIT, the proper university? Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of folks that came through MI that probably had that experience, where it wasn't necessarily it was like, oh, I don't know, I can't do this, and then went home. Numerous people while I was there do that. And, there's always going to be folks where you see them and you're like, they're so much better than me. But, you've still got something to say, and it's like, it's whether or not, I find it's more like whether or not you can put up with the lifestyle and maybe starving for a while in order to, and not having a steady paycheck necessarily, and, the constant moving from one gig to another and that kind of thing. That can drain on people, and I get that, and that's got nothing to do with playing ability, So, I would love to hear the PV5150 at EVH's personal settings with a Marshall cab. I don't know about the PV5150. I've seen his settings and actually played through it's a long story, but the way that he sets up the way that he set up the Fender ones, the new ones, 5153. Yeah. Look, it's Beckley. What's up, Matt Beckley? Let's watch the hockey game tomorrow. Oilers in the series, doing pretty good. It's 1-1 with Vegas, and they ruled last night. Although I missed the game, I didn't see it. But what was it, 5-1 or something? They won. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. It sounded like it was a blowout. Let's hope they keep it going. I've owned 12 SURs and Pete signature models, and the fretwork is the best, and they stay in tune. Yeah, not discounting that there could be a problem with his guitar, though. We want to help him. Could be issues. Let's see. Here's a super chat. Let's grab this. A few weeks ago, you mentioned the light you use for your videos. It's slender and on a tripod. Can you remind me of the brand? Aperture is what it's called, right? It's an Aperture 300X. So it's a full-blown, pro studio light that's really kind of too big for my space. But it's really good. If I turn it off, it gets very dark. I've only got it on. It's actually even a little bright right now. I've got it on like 24%. Here, I'll turn it down to like 17, just a little bit. It'll not be so overexposed. All right. The Cornell album was all Soldano. Not exactly. You're talking about Van Halen. There was some 3 Plus preamp on that record a little bit that was slaved into a Marshall that I think was maybe Steve Lukather's Marshall that had an effect loop added, so it had a power amp in. That's true. And he probably still, maybe he used the Marshall a little bit on that record too, I bet. The old one. Maybe not, though. But I know the 3 Plus was used. Yeah, Neil there with a super chat. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate that. It's 1:39. So what time did I start? I didn't start till almost noon, so we're going to go till 2. We're going to go till 2. And I'm far back. I'm about 20 minutes behind in the chat right now, so I keep going here. Is your Gil Yeren the closest thing you've played to a real 59? It's really good. There was a guy in England, too, named Terry Morgan, I think it is. My friend James Cole has played and used and owned a bunch of his guitars. They're pretty indistinguishable from the real thing, at least some of them that I've played. Max, I played a couple Maxes that were really great. But the Yerens they're pretty exceptional. Pretty exceptional. Any thoughts on stacking 2 compressors? The only time I tried that was with the Cali slide rig, and it actually does that in one pedal. And the whole thing was the little feet sound, slide guitar sound, was 2 1176s stacked into one another. And when you do that, it has the sustain and almost the tone and feel of a distorted, like a Dumble or something. It went with really smooth, and so for slide and stuff, watch the video I did on the slide rig from Cali, from Origin Effects. They also make the Cali 76. So kind of an interesting, stacking 2 compressors. I think when I did also the Dimension D video for the Roland pedal, I played Flesh for Fantasy in that, which was done with a Rockman and 2 compressors, and I might have used a compressor pedal or something on the input, and then one in the DAW as well after the fact, so pre and post kind of compression. I was really happy actually with the way the sound came out. I think I used a Kemper profile for that. I used my Kemper. It was a long time ago now, but I used a Kemper profile I found of a Rockman, because I know Steve used a Rockman originally. So for that super hyper clean stuff, it can be cool for sure. Any 90s guitars you want to grab before they get expensive? Not really. Nothing that comes to mind. I don't feel like the 90s was an awesome time for guitars, to be honest. I feel like there's better stuff made now. Like, honestly, when I think about some of these guitars, for example, like Les Pauls and stuff, like, I feel like some of the Gibson custom shop stuff in the last few years, the historic stuff, at least post 2014, 15, it got better and better and was really, really good. Like, some of them probably, getting into the quality of like the Yerens and stuff, I think, like, and the finishes seem more accurate, the colors, and they finally got the gold right. Nice guitars, but old guitars, like I still have a hankering for like a 70s Strat, like an early 70s, 71, 72, 73. I was looking to see how much they are yesterday. They're not too bad, the price. I found a burgundy mist one in Japan that I almost got like 5 years ago, and then I decided not to do it. Kind of wish I'd gotten it actually now, but anyways. Do you ever get requests to do music scores, whether it be movies or say Netflix? A little bit, yeah. Somebody approached me a while ago, and it never panned out, but it's just another world that I would have to get into and learn what I'm doing, I think, But one of these days, I'm certainly not opposed to it, Buzz says, he's going to buy a Macintosh. That's what I'm talking about, hi-fi. There was a great-looking hybrid Macintosh at the store I was in yesterday. It's a tube front end with a solid state. It was a power amp, but it's about $4,000. I'm like, that's probably a little rich for just getting in. It sure is cool. The Macintosh stuff is, my favorite bar in LA, the Gold Line. They got all Macintosh in there. It's like a record bar. It's like over 10,000 records, and Super cool. Yeah. CTS, did you buy the guitar new or used? Serious issues, you say. Well, just get it back to them and they will fix it for you. Things like fret wear and a guitar not staying in tune doesn't mean the guitar, or nicks in the frets and the guitar not staying in tune doesn't mean it was built poorly, you know? That's a mischaracterization. That's just a couple simple problems that could have been through shipping or through, you know, and then once again, it depends on the bridge and whether or not you're setting it up the right way. That bridge on my new guitar, right? On this bridge, it has to be set up just right. You know, you can't leave the lock screws too loose. A lot of people do that when they put strings on. They just sort of almost finger tighten them or do them where there's still play, and you're going to find it's going to go out of tune then. So you have to set it up right, just like you would a Floyd. So once again, don't go on the internet and say, this is horrible, I can't believe it, it's awful. Do the right thing, in my opinion, and contact them at customerservice@sur.com, and they will treat you with the utmost respect, and you will have the carpet rolled out for you, and you will get your guitar fixed, and it'll come back. They will make it right, no matter what it takes. That's how they roll. So just explain to them your problems, and you know, start a ticket with them and get it to them. And you know, usually many times with these problems, you know, if you kind of escalate it up the flagpole, you know, with customer service, John is the one that ends up doing the work and the, you know, when there's an issue, because he drives him insane. So it's like if there's a problem and something got through or got out, which doesn't generally happen, but nobody's perfect, he'll be the one making it right. And then generally people turn around and go, wow, I got it back and it's amazing. Like, thank you so much. I got the best customer service experience. So give them the chance to do it right, you know? Think my amps sound best at 90 plus dB. Well, that's just because you like to rock. Does the Fryette or tube amp expander provide the same feel, or is it just best at 90 plus dB? Well, it depends on the amps. Obviously, if you're a you know, non-master volume, crank it up to get it in the tone zone kind of guy or whatever, you know, then there's no getting around that. You got to turn it up to that zone. But you can try it attenuated with something like a power station and see if it's still. There's a difference between tone and you know, the volume being I just like it loud, or this is where the amp sounds good at this volume. You know, if it's something like a 5150 with a bunch of gain, the tone doesn't really change that much from, you know, quieter to louder to really loud. It's like, you know, yeah, you're going to start to get feedback and stuff, but the core tone is sort of generated in the preamp on those amps. If it's a Marshall Plexi with no attenuation and you got it on 3 and then 4 and then 6 and 7, it's like, oh my God, it sounds amazing on 7, but I'm going to, you know, get evicted. But you kind of have to have it there to get that sound. So it just depends on what amp it is. I recommend the Fryette ultimately for being the best reamp all-in-one box that's out there. That said, I mean, I used the tube expander, tube amp expander on tour, and it worked great for me. But that was for a different reason. Everything else aside, and just kind of the simple answer, the Fryette is a great solution for that, I think. Any chance of Sur releasing the Aura model, more stripped down, affordable level, maybe $3,000 range? I don't know. I think that they're so. I don't know. This is just me speaking. You know, they've got so much to do already with making guitars that have been ordered and what they've got kind of in the pipe that it's like. And Gibson is so litigious sometimes, you know, with getting. It's like, why bother? Is the juice worth the squeeze with you know, with them? That said, John's talked about, you know, wanting to do something that's a simpler build, maybe something that's like a junior more with P90s and stuff. He's mentioned that over time and ideas, you know. And I'm like, you should just go remember Gustafson, those guitars? They were shaped more like a Telly, but they were basically like a 59 Les Paul. I'm like, go that route. Like get completely out of the zone where they can even look at, you know, getting on your case illegally, and just do your own, because you'll come up with something beautiful and it'll be great, you know. So once you get away from their headstock and stuff anyway, it's like, well, does anybody really care if the body looks like, you know, it's, you know, if it's a beautiful design, it's a beautiful design. So I feel like people are more open to it now than than they used to be. Folks just, maybe I'm wrong, but some people are always going to want their Les Pauls to look like Les Pauls, I guess. But you should have singers join you on your demos. I would like to hear some of the things you demo sound with vocals. I know, but then I couldn't knock it out in one day and get the work done and move on to the next one. It becomes more of an album project then. But yeah, I'd love to do some stuff with, more stuff with singers would be great. There's absolutely no doubt. There's a super chat I got to get to there, but I'm going to move down through the chat here. Yeah. Yeah. CTS guitar. Well, you waited over a year for the guitar. Well, we're going to make it right. Once again, they'll do it. Give them the chance and then come back and tell us how it is after they finish it. I'll ask John about it personally. Here, watch this. There is a guy on my Sunday show named CTS Guitar, and he's got a problem with his PT guitar, and he's very upset with it. Period. Maybe you could look at it when it comes in. He's starting a support ticket. There you go. That's the boss. What more can you ask for? I just stressed him out on a Sunday, so I hope you're happy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm happy to help if I can. All right. Oh, it's a lefty. Oh, and it's a 510 bridge with Wilkinson saddles. Well, the tuning thing's probably down to just the nut. Something simple. It's interesting. It's a lefty. He'll make it right. He'll look at it and make sure it stays in tune. Is there a video coming about the Ernie Ball Music Man model? Yes. Yes, the EVH model. Sorry. Absolutely. Let's see. Just listen to the third Jazz Orbit. How do you say his name? I've never known how you say that. Interviewing Van Halen, Eddie said his Destroyer was an early one that was made of Carina before Ibanez went to using Japanese Sen. I don't know that that's true. That could be one of those Eddie things where he just thought that, Might be hard to tell, to be honest. But no, Carina's got a certain grain to it. If I ever get a chance to see that guitar, I'll let you know. That's interesting. I do know. Well, I'll see if I can at some point try and figure that out, because that would be interesting to know. Did Eddie like the Sheffield speakers? I think he kind of did. I seem to remember him. What came in the 5150 cabs? They were Sheffields of some sort, weren't they? They weren't Celestians. I think he had his own Sheffield thing, didn't he? For a minute. I seem to remember that. He liked, I know with the Soldano, he liked 75s. There was like a rental cab that was like an Andy Brower thing or something. And it was a cab with 75s. And he liked the sound of that with the Soldano. And I think he rented it or bought it or something and used it with that amp. Friedman can speak to that. Yeah. Did Ed ever use his older amps for recording, or did he usually stick with the current latest version? Yeah, he did. Like on the last record, the Different Kind of Truth record, he used the old Marshall, with the new amps, and they would, I don't know if they recorded them at the same time, I think probably, and printed a track with it and stuff. But yeah, he did. Went back to it, occasionally. Any tips on getting a distorted guitar warmer in a live setting? I have a cranked, I think you're trying to say 20-watt Jubilee, and it just sounds thin. Mids are cranked, highs are down. Well, move the mic further out to the edge of the speaker is the first thing. And so if this is the speaker and it's center, it's going to be the brightest, right? And then if you move it out towards the edge, it gets darker. And if you want it even darker, angle it out toward the edge a little bit. So away from the... And you'll find that just a little bit of angle actually changes that top end a lot. So that'd be the first thing. to getting a warmer sound. Generally speaking, I find that, or switch to a ribbon microphone. Get something like an SE, well, what's that might call it, VR1. If you want a nice warm sound on a guitar cabinet, switch to that off of 57. You got to be careful with them because you can't put phantom power into them or you'll blow it up. So, but the microphone I'm talking about. But just try a ribbon microphone. Shure makes one as well. You see them on Slash's cabs and stuff. They're like, it's got like a red end on it. It's like a black mic, but with a red kind of dust screen. Look into a ribbon microphone for a warmer sound, fatter sound, and you'll be amazed at how much that changes the tone. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a checklist to inspect a used guitar? I'll just, not really a list, but I'll just look at it and look at the condition of the frets and see if there's, it needs to be cleaned up or whatever. And if there's, any problems with the nut, or if it's a Wolfgang Special, it's probably got a Floyd. So I would try the Floyd and see if, dunking it, and then it's probably, unless it's been changed, it probably is fixed to the body, like a not floating, so it should come back in tune. But if it doesn't, sometimes Floyds, it's like you got to get the knife edges with a Dremel done and stuff. So just try the Floyd and make sure it seems to stay in tune. The detuner probably needs, if it's got a detuner on it, those are kind of finicky, and I find that you have to set them up like fairly regularly to do so that they go between D and E, or C sharp and E flat, depending on how you got it set up. So that's a few things to look at. When you travel, do you hit the local music stores? Usually, yeah. I mean, especially if I'm in a guitar city, New York or Tokyo, or I like to go in. Any good stories on your finds? Well, my 66 Tele came from Japan. Guitar Trader, love that store. I've found, like, especially when you go to Japan, man, it's magic for finding cool stuff, because you'll find Tokais or old Squire Strats, man. I've been so close to buying a couple of those mid 80s, when they came out, and they're really good. Like a big headstock Squire Strat that was Olympic white. I remember like finding one of those and being like, ooh, I should get this, and I didn't. But I got my Tele over there. And sometimes it's just fun. Like, you'll see guitars that you just can't get, Edwards, or like I say, Takai or Bernie's or stuff like that when I'm in Japan. So that's always fun. Yeah. I bought from Gruen's in Nashville. That's where my old Strat came from, my 64. So that was a good day. I remember that was a very special time. It was like the fall of the year that I got in the Chris Cornell band. We'd already toured a lot, and it was a great year. I'd made some money. We went to Gruen's with Yogi, my guitar pal in the band, and we went in and started playing old Strats. I'm like, I can actually afford one of these if I want one. Maybe I should get one. And I did. And it was like, I remember trying the guitars and then buying that guitar and taking it to the gig, probably using it that night. And then Peter Frampton came and sat in at that gig. I remember that was the first time we met. We became friends. It was like a great day. It was just like it's like playing with this great rock singer and like buying guitars and hanging out. It was like, this is a great tour. Like, special time in life, So that was a good memory. Those days, you don't always have days like that, right? And sometimes it's a you know what I'm saying? It's just like you gotta take it all in, I got this mic kind of pointed away from me. That probably sounds better. These are pretty directional. Don't know why it was like that. Probably sounds a little more present now, although nobody's been complaining about that. Okay. There's a couple good questions here. Was John Suhr an amp designer before guitar manufacturer? No, he did guitars first. But he was always kind of into amps as well on that end of it. So when John started out, it was at he worked in another store before, but then he got the job at Rudy's doing guitars, and he'd gotten really good at guitar repair somehow before getting there, but started working at Rudy's and then became quickly quite well known with the local New York, clientele. Folks like Lou Reed and Peter Frampton and just the folks around town, and quickly started building too, and which evolved into the Pensa Suhr guitars. First thing they were doing was building out of Schecter parts, so they would get parts casters and Tellys and Strats and stuff, and he would make guitars, I think, out of. And at the time, Tom Anderson, I think, was at Schecter, So they have a long friendship and stuff. And then quickly they started, moving into, I think getting, doing the bodies and the necks themselves and stuff like that. So, but then in the 90s, Bob Bradshaw offered him a position, with custom audio, and Bob wanted to design an amp, I think, and hired John to kind of come on board and be that for him, be the amp guy. So then he relocated to LA because Bradshaw was in LA and started doing amps. So now he's building, the 3+ preamp, the original OD100 and stuff like that. And then he ended up at Fender Custom Shop after that, back to guitars, but also working with amps too. And then started Sir. So that was that journey, I think. Hopefully I got that right. Do you like the Faces? Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. I'd take a 90s Tom Anderson. Oh, yeah. 90s Tom Anderson's good, for sure. We're late 90s Sirs. The early Sirs, fantastic. That's a good point. Speaking of Anderson, we're just talking about him. So my first 59 Les Paul in a pawn shop. Get out of here, really? In 1975. $75. Come on. That's incredible. Jeff's story I like that one. You don't hear stories like that anymore. That's amazing. $75. Oh, man. That's so crazy. It's like, they must have been worth something then, though, because, that was after the Mike Bloomfield and Peter Green and Keith Richards and people, the Les Paul had already sort of, the resurgence had happened. So I guess that was just a lucky find. But yeah, you should have bought that. Sorry, I don't mean to rub it in. I remember when in my local town in the early 80s, at Lilo's Music, not a pawn shop, it was a music store, kind of a funny music store. But anyways, they had a 56 Black Beauty that I was kind of coveting. That they kept it all the way through till a couple of years ago when the store closed, and then they sold everything. But it was $4,000 or something. They told me they would sell it to me for in the early 80s. Now that guitar ends up, it's not quite the 59 Les Paul story at $4,000, but still would have been a good investment had that money when I was 12 years old or 13, but I didn't have $4,000. I think that's how much it was, four or five or something. They told me they would sell it to me for. That was probably expensive then, but it ended up being a $55,000 guitar, right? Those 56 Les Pauls, so something like that, $50K, So, anyways. Let's see. You got a super chat I got to grab there, but you're making suggestions on hi-fi stuff. Vintage amps, receivers from mid-70s to early 80s. Techniques, Kenwood, Marantz, or Pioneer. You will get a good analog warmer sound, and your turntable will sound great. I have an old Techniques direct drive turntable from the early 80s. That was my family's. It was my parents. They bought it. I still have that at home. So I could use that and just get the cartridge replaced maybe, and then just get everything else I need. And it would be kind of fun because then I'd have my old turntable. The only problem is the glass cracked on it, on the top, for the thing that goes up and down. So it's kind of a bummer. But it'd still be cool to have and use. Was there a guitarist you could play with in a band? Who would it be? Oh, wow. I don't know. I'd have to really think about that. There's a lot of people, to be honest, like modern stuff, that I think would be really fun. But I really enjoyed playing with Brian Ray recently. We did that show out in Palm Springs, where we got to play with Alice Cooper and Paul Rogers and stuff, and we had a nice rapport. I like playing with Brian, so that would be fun, to do a tour of some sort with him. I think would be really fun. Peter Evans, thank you for the super chat. Super great Sunday show. Thank you, sir. Don't ever change. Thank you. I know we've had a few complaints this week, haven't we? Videos this week. I'm working on something special right now that I got to knock out and get done. It won't be out for a couple weeks, but it's going to be cool and special. So more on that soon. Stuff that's going to come out this week. Got a bunch of stuff to do. I really got to do this Mother Load pedal from Crazy Tube Circuits. That's a Rat and Big Muff in one. So that'll be a fun video. So I got to get to doing that. I got a Horizon pedal here. Misha Mansour. And then just a whole bunch of other stuff to do. Some amps, a couple Bad Cat amps here. Make a video with those. That'll be fun. Yep. If you get an amp for your Les Pauls, would it be solid state or tube? Well, it would be tube, I think. Tube. My Plexi, Horst says, is best between 8 and 8.5. Agreed. Probably got the big bright cap and just sounds perfect right there, right? Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Any word on a PT50 amp? Yes. So we made nice little progress on that this week. I went out there for a meeting, and we're working on it. So it's going to happen. And we down to a timeline and some stuff. So it won't be, right away, but I'll let you know. I'll keep you posted, but we're making progress. And it'll be a nice, not really PT15 at all, but more PT100, but an evolution with a bit more range, I would say, than a PT100. I really want, my goal is, it's great high gain already. Maybe even, because John would like, I think, to have an amp that has the original OD100 or PT100 that was custom audio had a gain boost in it that I guess some people still really like a big, fat, sustainy, tons of gain sound. So we might put that in there as an option. And then my main goal is to have a true Plexi sounding second channel that can be like super duper Plexi. The mid gain thing. So right there, range, right? And then of course we'll do the terrific clean channel, and you'll have that whole range of stuff there. So just a little bit. The current amp, pretty great for that, but this wider even, and in the zone, especially like all the way through the range. That's kind of my goal. So, what amp would you pair with an AC30 for a stereo pedal rig? The first thing that came to mind, without a doubt, was a deluxe reverb. Because I did that working with Linda Perry a lot. She had a great 65 deluxe and a great early 60s AC30, and I used to run them together many times and blend the sounds, and they were just so complementary, the Fender thing and the Vox thing together, and it'll sound incredible. So yeah. You're the best, bro. Above and beyond texting John. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. He's a good guy. I probably just stressed him out on a Sunday. Like I say, I feel kind of bad about it. I'll call him after. But they'll make this fella's guitar right. Yeah. A lot of guys probably had great days like that meeting you, Pete. Thank you, man. I know I would. Thank you. Appreciate that, Todd. You're always a supporter here, and I appreciate you being here. And I hope to meet you someday. Karstens. Hey, dude, what's up? We saw you the other day on Tone Talk. That was great. I watched almost the whole thing. It was quite enjoyable. I was video editing while I was watching and listening, and I liked it. You make a nice amplifier. Bon Scott has the best vocal reporting almost ever. How did they do it? Probably was just coming out of his mouth that way, the way he sounded, I'm sure. Yeah. What time is it? 2? Oh, geez, I'm over. Well, okay, I'll go another 5 minutes and then I'm going to get out of here. Okay, just working through to get a couple super chats I got to grab there. Here's one, guitars for your project. Can you please explain in detail how to split the output on a quad Cortex with stereo out to power amp and conventional cabs and the other to front of house? Sure. In your first chain, just put an amp block and then whatever other effects you want, right? And then you're going to have a split after that. So first chain at the top is going to go through all that stuff. Then you're going to have a split. Going to go down to the second line, right? Split down to the second line. And what you're going to do is then on the top line, put a cab block. And then at the output, you're going to have, you're going to set that to output 1, 2 on that first chain. That's going to be your cab thing going out the XLRs to the front of house. The split chain that you just went down below, you split right before the cab block, right? And then at the end, it's going to be set to 3/4, going out to a power amp. Now, the only problem with what I just said was if you use a mono cab block, any of your stereo effects are going to be compromised and some to mono. So what you might have to do, I think in the quad you can pan, because it is technically stereo, the IR, so you can pan the two. So use the same cabinet in each cab block and then pan it out, and then your effects will be stereo. But there's another way to do it. If you want to, you can go into the first chain without any stereo effects, do the split, put the cab block in the top after the split, and then put a stereo delay, reverb, whatever after that, and then go out 1, 2, and then in the bottom, in the next chain 1, 2, put your stereo effects, go out 3/4, outputs 3/4. So that's the most important thing, is setting the top chain to 1, 2, the next chain down to 3/4. Now you're kicking out the different outputs, and one output has a cab block in it, and the other one doesn't. Does that make sense? But now you've got effects in both. So what you got to do is duplicate the effects. So you're just going to have to go through, and you can actually copy paste effect settings. So do one chain where you like the sound, you get your delay, your reverb, whatever you've got there. If you've got those effects at all, maybe you don't need to worry about this. But if you do, get the sound right, and then follow the instructions for copying that effect setting, and just copy it down into the blocks in the next, and then you'll have the exact same sound. One kicking out a outputs 3/4 with no cab, 1, 2 will have the cab. I hope that all made sense. If you don't answer Matt Beckley as the guitarist you must like to play with, I'm going to be really upset. Well, come on, dude. Let's do a band then. What are we going to do? What are we going to call it? Let's do an America cover band. How about that? It'll be fantastic. There's a PT50. Son of a bitch. There goes my disposable income. It's going to happen. It's not yet, so you don't have to save just yet, but start saving maybe next month. 2 months from now. Mitch with the super chat. Thank you, sir. There, just paying it forward. I appreciate that. CTS Guitar says about your guitar, hopefully you'll get fixed up and playing great. I guarantee it. They will make it so good it'll be better than you ever could have imagined. I promise. Of all your plexis, can you live without your 72 Marshall? I have an option to buy a clean one. Really want it, but wonder if the magic wears off. Should I get something else plexi-wise? I'm of the mind that I love that one. It's great. If I didn't have it, I've still got my SL68, and it gives me all that I kind of need. It's almost like the Yaren. It's like, do I really need a 59 Les Paul? The Yaren is like pretty great. I love the old thing, but it's like so expensive, and so you know what I mean, all that stuff. So it's like, these are tools, at the end of the day. So no, I don't need that 72 Marshall, although it's really nice. It's a great sounding amp and a ton of fun. I love it. I've got the SL68, so it's a little redundant, to be honest, but it's still cool having an old. It's just cool having an old Marshall, Is Reb Beach still using PT100s? Yes, I believe he really likes the original version of it, but I think he's got new, or maybe, I don't remember what he's using, but I think he's got the custom audio sort of spec, which is the tube boost and all that stuff. He likes a lot of gain. So, do you have a protocol for recording an artist's song? Do you cover all the bases for the producer? Generally, they tell you what they want, they'll, we want this, we want that, or do your thing, or, replace these guitars, or it can be anything from like replace this with better sounding guitars, but basically the same, to being like, just go for it and do whatever you want, So there's no hard and fast rule, I would say. I'm going to go and get some work done. I hope I helped to answer your questions and your concerns, and that you had a nice time here today. And I'm sorry that there wasn't any playing to that one guy that wanted more sound and less to be, what did he say? Like the news. Like the news. I'd like to do the news. That'd be all right. I think I could do a better job than a lot of those cats. A little annoying. Some of them. Some of them are great, though. I'd be Walter Cronkite. That's what I'd be. All right. Everybody have a great week. Beckley, pick out the song list for our America cover band. And I'll see you guys next Sunday for more good times on Sunday Live. It's a Pete Thorn Sunday Live, talking about your whammy bar and your overdrive. Yeah.